What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, and you're here for another episode of the Facts Project. Today, I have a very special guest, Monty Nero. We're here going all the way across the pond in lovely Scotland to talk about Chrome Roses, the Cyberpunk tale that is now going to be on its third issue of this trilogy on Kickstarter. Thank you for being here, sir.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Absolutely. Cheers. Absolutely. So when we're talking about this, and the fact that we actually just had a conversation where it kind of like relates to like certain things that are happening today. When did you realize for the first part, when you started writing this, that you wanted this to become a trilogy rather than just a single book?
Straight away, really. I had so many ideas. I realized that's why I decided to do it. I'd written cyberpunk stories for about sort of 20 years, off and on. And I'd never really done too much with them because I'm always writing or drawing something. And it just seemed like a really good umbrella to bring a lot of those stories into this world, along with all the new ideas I had that made it kind of seem very relevant to now, which was specifically two things. One is that I realized that cyberpunk problems and issues and kind of the environment was actually now. It wasn't this future thing as it had been for most of my life up to that point. I realized actually the problems we have with like AI and not being able to believe what you can see and catfishing and the way that sort of online technology has changed how people talk to each other, how they kind of hook up, how they kind of vote. These are all very cyberpunk kind of issues. So it's actually something that's really relevant to our lives now. And also, what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing was that for a while I was really into cyberpunk when I was in my teens and early 20s, and then I started thinking like, oh, it's it's a bit dated. It's very 80s, all this 80s tech and stuff. But what happened was I realized I actually love the 80s-ness of it. So with my art style, I do something new with it, which is I add all this biotechnology and it's sort of organic, so it's alive. But I also kind of lean into the 80s bulkiness of the tech, and there's a reason why it has to be kind of chunky and look like an old sort of Nintendo or have all these big cables and stuff. Yeah. So I kind of fit all those ideas together to make something that looked fresh visually, but also was very resonant to what we're all kind of living through.
This is true. Now, with this series, of course, written, drawn, and lettered by yourself, the series blends cyberpunk and noir to where now what drew you to basically mix these two genres together?
I love them both. And I think I get frustrated when I try and watch cyberpunk or consume cyberpunk. I get frustrated when it becomes something else, like a sort of sci-fi thing or a sort of space opera thing or whatever. And to me, cyberpunk has to have A, punk, B, cyber, which is, all the futuristic computer shit.
Yeah.
C, it has to be in a very claustrophobic urban environment. And D, there needs to be like murder mystery and these kind of heavy shadows and kind of noir detective elements.
Yeah.
And that to me makes like a perfect cyberpunk story. So to me, it was essential. It was like non-negotiable. So it's like thematically, I enjoy consuming all those kind of stories, but also I just love drawing that shit. So I love drawing the noodly futuristic cities, all the tech. I love drawing the shadows. I love drawing the detectives stalking through the grimy streets in the sort of mist, all kind of weathered and beaten up. I love drawing the action. It's just an absolute dream project to draw, and I think that enthusiasm comes across in the kind of pages.
That's true. Now, was there like a moment, I guess, before you actually like started to put this thing together, where the project like clicked creatively for you?
Yeah, because when you're a writer artist like I am, you're always working on stuff, things, stories, projects. And what I do is I work hard, but I also try. And so I think you have to be working every day. You have to do like at least 8 hours work a day. Normally when you're producing comics, you're talking more like 10 hours or, because it's a vocation rather than a job.
Yep.
So you're always working on stuff, but you also need to be careful to kind of ride your inspiration. So when you're inspired, genuinely inspired, that's like super valuable creatively because it kind of like it spurs you on to make stuff sort of really to a really high standard and quickly as well.
Yeah.
So whenever you get inspiration, you have to go with it. So I was supposed to be doing another kind of book, and everything just sort of coalesced. And I was actually in a car crash. I was in a really bad car crash. It was like a 70-mile-an-hour smash and span the car across 4 lanes of the motorway. And
Mm.
I was lucky to get out of that,
Sorry to hear that.
unscathed. But it really, really shook me up, and it completely totaled my car. So it was quite a heavy scene. So when I was dealing with all that, when I got back home, I just started doodling all this kind of cyberpunk stuff, all these kind of cities and like technologies, and I just sort of doodle away, and I do it for hours and really lose myself in it. Because the thing about futuristic stuff is you don't need any reference.
Hmm.
You can just sort of doodle it, and you can just sort of invent things, and no one can tell you it's wrong.
Yeah.
So I did this for a few months, kind of while I was dealing with all the insurance claims and stuff. Like 5 hours getting passed around on the phone
Oh God.
from asshole to asshole. So I draw this stuff just to keep myself calm when I was talking to people on the phone. On the phone, and then after a while, I looked at it and I thought, this is really fucking good stuff. You know what I mean? This looks fucking awesome.
Mm.
And of course, it was just doodles, so it was all in black and white.
Right.
So, and I thought this actually looks cooler than like because at the time I was drawing things on the computer and coloring them on the computer, and I thought this actually looks cooler than that. This looks really alive and interesting. So it was the fact that I had all these ideas and scripts, and also the art style kind of clicked. And I think to make something that's going to make an impact, you need it to look really interesting and fresh, like
Hmm.
a bit different from anything else. So it was the fact that I had some new ideas about cyberpunk, but also I had some new visuals. So the two things came together, and I thought I've got to do this next.
Excellent. Now, and the thing is, you can definitely tell by that. Of course, from it being noir base, where you see the hints of black and white, but you also see like also that distinctive like lightish light blue that you see in the eyes of Cram. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, to get into the context of the story. The story, of course, is set in a tract. It's a dystopian city
Mm.
where the detective, our protagonist, Cram, pursues a punk vigilante amid strange murders, and obviously there's a little bit of social collapse. But the tract feels like a character itself.
Mm. Mm.
How did you design that world? Now, I would
Well,
figure from that insurance claim that like you probably built that world completely out because there's points where you step away on the page and you see the landscape of the tract and it just looks
yeah.
amazing. It looks vast.
Yeah, it's plays to my strengths because I'm good at perspective.
Okay.
So I'm really strong with drawing perspectives and panoramic views and angles and action at all kinds of different angles and moving things around in 3D.
Hmm.
Just with a pen in my head. So I've always been good at that. I'm much better at that aspect of it than doing other things that are important if you're a comic artist. So I just lean into a lot of what I'm good at. So there's a lot of action and there's a lot of amazing sort of double page city sort of scapes and things like that. It's really fun to draw, and it's great for the story. There's always a storytelling reason. There's always things that I don't just do gratuitous action. It's always like moving the story forward. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I try and think things when I'm drawing. I think things through very. I don't just doodle without thinking. I'm kind of constantly thinking like, okay, what could this building be? What purpose would it have? How would they power it? How would they get kind of suppliers in and out of it? How would it be lit? How would they collect the refuse? How would it be communicating? And that gives you like just ideas to sort of just draw futuristic versions of things.
Yeah.
And sort of so you build the story, the world out conceptually when you're writing the script on one level, and then when you're drawing it, you're getting into much more kind of granular detail about how it all actually works. And I'm glad I do like the cities. I mean, the cityscapes obviously had a good reaction to a lot of those. It looks alive, as you say. It looks
Yeah.
a little different to some other things, but not. It's still not where I wanted it to be or where I pictured it in my head. There's always this battle when you're an artist. You've got an idea in your head, and then something comes out on the page, and it's never quite exactly what you were picturing. So I'm still trying to get it to a certain place, but which I'm doing with the next book. Sort of pushing myself to make it even more kind of cooler,
Hmm.
freakier, more kind of unusual. It's quite tricky, but yeah, I think it's important to always just be pushing yourself to take it to the next level. So yeah, that's what I try and do.
Yeah, no, for one, I got to thank you because usually with a lot of cyberpunk, there's a lot of the world that's basically created with all these definitive terms, and you
Mm,
basically put a glossary at the end of the book to basically
yeah.
detail a lot of the things that are basically being said and what their essentially their definition might be. So when we're talking about like how much of the future society of Chrome Roses reflects the ideas about where our real world might be heading. You have like
Mm,
somewhat definitive terms that are kind of like based in there, like the actual freelance enforcement directive that Cram
mm,
works for, where he's kind of like a PI in
mm.
sense where they're doing like almost like a they're doing work for hire, but yet they're being paid in a certain way to where everything of mechanic sorts are pretty much looking for themselves to like have a come up of like you might have another they were talking about you put like the toaster might be richer than you are in Sitchware.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's like working for their monetary payments, and it's like
yeah.
it's a hustle. The whole town is one big hustle.
Yeah, I mean that's the way things are going. That's the way people want to restructure our society around the internet, so that basically all our jobs will be just a 5 hour economy, and it's like who the fuck can we get to do this cheapest? And
Yeah,
then you get rated. It's just a lot of things. It's just basically just full of things that annoy the fuck out of me, basically.
yeah,
So this constant, I can't do anything. I don't know you. I can't do anything. I can't do anything online without some arsehole emailing me saying, "Will you rate this out of 5?" And I'm just like, no, I just want you to do your fucking job. And then I'll tell you if there's a problem and I'll tip you extra if it's extra good. But I'm not fucking giving you 5 stars every time we have an interaction.
hmm,
So the whole economy is based on this idea that you're just hiring people on the across the internet as cheap as you can, so anyone can be a lancer as long as they're kind of able to get an employer. But then the certain ones get also employed by the FED, so the feds, and then they have to basically just live or die by their ratings. So it's like whenever they do an investigation or a forensic kind of collection or an interaction with a suspect or something, they're constantly getting graded
yeah,
across. So everyone's lives is just ordered by these kind of 5 star ratings.
yeah,
So I can see that happening. So unless we kind of resist it.
yeah.
So
It's funny because what you said in the beginning because there's that one particular scene where they're investigating that crash scene, and at
yeah,
the end of their talk, he drives away and he gives them like a 3-star rating out of 5.
yeah, yeah,
Cram
yeah.
gives him and literally the opposite. He gives him a 5 and he calls him an asshole and he drives off.
Yeah, yeah. So that's part of the story. So it's not just like a cosmetic thing, that actually turns out to be quite key to the story and how Cram can operate in this world, and the backstory to the whole thing, which it'll emerge. I think all good stories, you've got your. I try and structure it quite episodically, so there's constantly sort of things happening and crimes that are being solved or cases that are being solved. So it's the kind of thing of like where you've got a sort of story every week on the TV show where something gets resolved, but then over the season, then there's other storylines, bigger storylines that emerge until we reach the culmination at
Yeah,
the end of the sort of trilogy. So that's the way I try and structure it. With you know, everything's basically a chapter of this bigger story, but some of the chapters feel like short stories on their own. It's because I like writing. I like writing short stories. I like writing things with an ending and beginning and some sort of meaning. So So I just find that satisfying and quite easy to do as a writer. So hopefully it'll make it more enjoyable for people because they can always be getting kind of some kind of reward for the time they put in reading, as
Mhm.
far as that seems to have wrapped that bit up, or but there's always also an underlying kind of reason to keep reading and find out what the bigger conspiracy is.
Yeah. Now, one of the big things about the book, and one of the things that I think I usually see in Cyberpunk, is the fact that there's always a particular set of rules set out for technology and for society in that
Mm,
universe. And then you honestly see how they can be broken, how basically rebellion
mhm,
starts. Now, were there, we might have already answered this, were there particular rules set for technology for,
mm.
and were there basically the rules that were given to society before it was broken?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Though that is fundamental to the plot and the final resolution, so I can't really get too deep into that.
Mhm.
But it's a very important theme, and as you say, it's an important part of all cyberpunk. Kind of, how is this future dystopia structured,
Mhm.
and who benefits and who loses. So we're in a very important time right now where things are happening to our countries and to our lives, and the way that the online apps and platforms are kind of affecting us. And no one asked us if we want this stuff, and we just kind of have to sort of deal with it as best we can and push back. So, a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 5 years, I'd say, is not really in the interests of our freedom or our kind of choice, freedom of choice to be who we want to be and to live our life the way we want to live. We're kind of getting kind of channeled into these sort of kind of, we're getting spoon fed these kind of, oppressive kind of terms and conditions,
Yeah.
which we seem to have no choice, have no choice in. It's like take it or leave it. And as anyone knows who's ever been booted off one of these platforms, you've got no recourse.
For sure.
So to me, what we clearly need is we all need an algorithm that is transparent and fair. So we all see what the algorithm is, and we know that it's fair.
Yeah.
So everyone's getting a fair crack, because it's too important to let billionaires just decide whatever the fuck they want to do is fine. So, you've got billionaires of all kinds of political persuasions who might at any point take over any of these apps or platforms and do whatever the hell they want with it. That's not good enough. We need clear, transparent algorithms that serve us, the people.
Right.
That's what we need. So until we have that, I think we're all basically in trouble. So, and that's the way it's evolved. Because initially you're just thinking like, oh, okay, we're getting a lot of free stuff here. They've just given us this amazing free platform that's free, and we can all use it and
Yeah.
interact and stuff. So cool. So now we're getting the catch, right? So now we're getting the catch. Now we're getting oppressed. Now
Yeah.
we're
For
getting
sure.
channeled in certain directions. So yeah, we need transparency. We need
That,
transparency
that was
and
like
freedom.
a question that had occurred to me. Of course, we're seeing this through the point of views of course, Cram, and even into the whole gang of Teo and Ghost Core who are in the Chrome Roses. But
Mm,
essentially, there's a bigger field at play with the track itself. There is,
mm.
are we to see an origin story of the track itself? Who built it? What what
Yeah,
what
yeah, that
consummated the
does.
rules that happen to this
Yeah,
entire world?
yes, it does. That does tie in very fundamentally with the kind of main underlying kind of conspiracy and mystery of the story.
Hmm.
So we will see that. Um, in the first trilogy, the resolution of that, it's kind of revealed, and it's very sort of hopefully very surprising and interesting what
Hmm.
the final kind of twist is. But obviously, at that point, when you've sort of revealed that to the audience, then you can in future stories delve back into, okay, so how did that come about? And
Hmm.
again, I don't want to give too much away because it's very fundamental to the excitement of turning the page throughout the first three books. So, but yeah, that is a big part of what I've come up with.
Mm. Now, to talk about Crim, uh,
Mm.
Outcast Detective. Obviously, this is noir based. You get to see him speak almost in the first person a lot,
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
within himself. What you see from classic noir, but what makes it
yeah.
different than classic noir detectives? Or was there somebody that basically you felt inspired from, that you wanted him to be like, but yet in this world?
Yeah, I watched Blade Runner again, which obviously I've seen Blade Runner loads of times, and it's a
Yep.
big inspiration. I watched it again last week, and I was struck. I was like, "Oh, this is actually quite similar to some of the tonal kind of nature of the narration in Chrome Roses." But it wasn't deliberate, and I think it's just the fact that all this stuff basically derives from the old kind of 30s to 50s kind of pulp
Yeah.
detective novels and the Raymond Chandlers and stuff, and I've read a lot of that. So it's probably we're all kind of drawing from the same well when we kind of hear these kind of voices. I always try and do something original with my characterizations. So he's not a typical detective. He's got some unique kind of quirky edges.
Yeah.
Like he's like he has to sell all his kind of classic sort of Led Zeppelin vinyl to to sort of finance the case because no one gets paid enough. You know, it's a gig economy, so you have to finance your own stuff until you eventually
Hmm.
get paid at the end. So there's lots of sort of he's got an interesting kind of old fashioned AI unit that he talks to that's kind of very outdated, which again, the fact that this unit is outdated and not getting updates is part of what will tie into the final story. So everything that happens in a good story should seem like really sort of just casual and interesting, but actually everything from page one is there for a reason and will come back to mean something later.
Yeah.
Like the fact that all the AIs in all the kind of toasters and kind of appliances and service robots and things, um, they're all part of the economy, so they can invest and they can sort of partake in sort of buying things, and they
Yeah.
have sort of circuitry to behave in those sort of ways. So that's part of just making the economy kind of buzz and work. So from that point of view, yeah, your toaster can be richer than you are, which is quite humbling. So I thought that was funny. It made me laugh. But again, all that will come to mean something in the end.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think coming back to the original question, I think it's basically what this story is. Everything else I've done to this date has been kind of script led. So it's all about the script, the dialogue, and the ideas in the script. And this one, what I did was I always plot out my stories right to the end in scene by scene. So I have like sort of 60 cards with every scene on, and I kind of work on that for quite a long time. I put them on the floor, I shuffle them around, I kind of delete ones, I add ones, and I make
Yeah.
it all kind of coalesce so that the whole story flows really nicely. That's a really good way of working because A, you never get writer's block, and B, you can sort of look down and sort of see the whole story, like, and see how to make it kind of flow better and how to be more exciting. And you can say, oh, I could bring those two things together, and that could be one scene, which would be amazing. Or I could say, like, oh, there's too much happening there. That needs to be 3 scenes. And you make sure every character has their own kind of arcs, so they're all kind of doing something different by the end of the story than they were at the start. So, but that's not kind of writing the script. It's just kind of like understanding what the story is, and then kind of almost like a sort of framework. Just
Yeah.
kind of literally each scene is just like a sentence or two. Because if the scene is more than a sentence or two, that means you haven't got a clear idea what the scene is. The scene should be so clear what it's doing that you can describe it in a sentence or two. So if it's longer than that, then there's too much going on in the scene, or you're not clear enough in your head about what it is or why it's there. So, but once you've got that, instead of writing the script, what I then did was, okay, right, I know my story. I know I can write a great script. I know I can do good dialogue. So what I'll do now is I go straight to art. So I start telling the story visually.
Hmm.
So everything in this kind of thing is all visual storytelling, and I lean in much more to the okay. I always try and ask myself when I'm creating a scene, how do I make it different to something that I've seen before? I don't want to just like emulate some really cool stuff that I've seen in other cyberpunk stuff. I want to do something new.
Yeah.
So with the art, I'm always thinking, okay, how can I make this visual? Like one example, say I had this scene where Cram is investigating this murder mystery where there's all these kind of dead bodies, and they're all trying to have sex like naturally. They're like way, you know, me and people today have sex, but in the future you have to do it through these husks, which are kind of like barriers that kind of provide everything you need through the internet, enhance your senses, but then also protect you from viruses and kind of like biological pathogens and things. So not having a husk and having sort of relations with another human is super dangerous in the future. So these like 9 people are found who've been doing this, and Cram investigates this, and then that's when he first meets the suspect who's fleeing from the scene, Tio, who's like the kind of cyberpunk girl on the cover of one of the books.
Yeah.
So she's a really important character in the book. So and as far as the plot, that's what needs to happen. That's what I've written. Okay, these things happen. But as soon as I came to draw it, I was like, okay, this sounds visually pretty. I mean, obviously the sex and the murder is quite interesting, but we've seen things in lots of different films of all sorts of different types. So I thought, how do I make this kind of original and cool and cyberpunky? And so what I decided was to do the whole thing in 0G.
Yeah.
So instead of having like a corridor or a room, like I don't know, the Night Owl in LA Confidential, I said, right, I'll make the whole thing. So they decided to have this kind of orgy in like 0G, in a 0G chamber.
See them all floating up top.
Yeah, so they're all kind of floating around dead in this kind of like weird environment, techno gubbins everywhere, you know, pipes and glowing sort of things and computer circuitry. And then Cram has to investigate this, and he's at the bottom and he sees Tio right at the top of this 0G thing. So then he has to launch himself through this 0G, which is just like a sort of chamber in the middle of this kind of this big sort of building. So it's like, instead of just meeting in a corridor and sort of chasing each other, it's kind of like this whole different dimension visually, and it all looks really interesting and fresh. So I did that all the time. I'm just constantly trying to think, okay, what's the most visually cool way to tell this now? And then I know that I often sort of, you don't change the plot, but you just add something to make it a bit different or a bit more interesting, and then I know I can come back, and often I'm dialoguing it as I'm drawing it anyway, so you know, you're just sort of writing, you know, scribbling like what the dialogue is as they're doing things that you're drawing, and then you come back, and often with dialogue the first pass at it is the best one, because you tend to, if you just keep working dialogue, you tend to over elaborate it, and it starts to sound like not like natural speech. So
right.
I've learned that over the years, that as long as you've got a clear idea what who your characters are, their different personalities, you know, you've got an idea in your head of, you can hear them speaking, then often like you just kind of rat-a-tat it, and like it's very quick to do dialogue because that sounds natural and that sounds like they've got personality.
Yeah. Now, if I was to dive in your head for a second, the way you basically just analyze that, the sequence is plot, then the world building, and then the characters?
No, characters come before plot. So
before plot.
I'm very character based, because I started, before I was doing comics, I was a comic character designer. So I used to design characters for computer games and things like that. So when I'm developing a comic and the sort of visual look and the feel of it and how it's going to look fresh and different, I always do it with characters. So because characters really they're going to be on all the covers, they're going to be in almost every panel. They're like the envoy and the sort of flavor of the comic. So if you can design a character that looks fresh and interesting and cool, and they're on the cover and in every panel, then your comic automatically looks fresh and interesting and cool. You know what I mean? So to me, I design anything comic-wise through the characters, and I spend a long time designing the characters to make them look interesting and different. And then when I've got that, it's quite a long process. So you're constantly thinking about how they might talk, or why they are wearing that particular thing, and where they picked it up, and you're sort of coming up with back history. And stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
you kind of, from that, you extrapolate, okay, so what kind of world would these characters be able to exist in? All the great characters in comic books, they have a unique look and way of being. Like Spider-Man, he looks very different to anyone else, and he moves very differently to anyone else. And
Right.
someone like Todd McFarlane drew him in a really sort of freaky, loose way,
Oh yeah.
kind
I
of
guess your
just
foot
made
will
the
be way
comic
up here and
look.
his body's down here.
Yeah, yeah, it just looks completely different to anything else. So Batman as well, Batman is so successful because he moves and looks completely different to anything else, or certainly more successful version of anything else in that sort of sphere. So the visuals and the design of a character allow the comic to be this kind of original and interesting thing. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not the other way around, or at least that's how I work anyway. So yeah, I'll often, by the time I finish designing the characters, I've got like enough dialogue for sort of 4 or 5 great scenes,
Oh, for
the
sure.
key scenes in the book.
I think the character of Cram is like extremely unique because you kind of see where he starts in the beginning, where there's a sort of vulnerability towards the world that he's kind of like surrounded in. He's
Yeah,
he's married. Was he married at that time? And
well, he's
or
certainly he's had relationships in the past,
yeah,
but now he's cocooned in this kind of protective shell, this coat and this helmet, and he's kind of protected, but he's also trapped.
yeah.
So so
The term you gave was nobots, right? Like he's almost
yeah,
converting himself.
yeah, he's not actually a nobot, but he's kind of halfway there. So nobots are people that completely give themselves over to, the more computer enhanced version of humanity. So
Hmm.
basically, like the programs are running the show rather than the sort of the human kind of chemicals and pheromones and sort of brain and organic matter. So yeah, I wanted to capture with Cram. He looks very imposing. He's fucking scary if you saw him coming down the corridor with that gun.
Yeah,
Serious operator, but he's not like a one-dimensional tough guy. He's got like yeah, an interior life, and he's funny, and he's kind of like pissed off about things, and
hmm,
things aren't going so great for him because he's an honest guy in a dishonest city. So he's not earning the big money that some of the lancers that are prepared to do things that are more conducive to the way certain forces want the city to be run. He's not open to that. So he doesn't get the big cases, and he doesn't get the 5-star ratings, and he doesn't get the big money. So that's part of his burden.
yeah. And the thing is, like, I guess in this world there isn't a complete encompass law enforcement. He's basically just following a directive because, as you described him, he's a Fed freelance
Yeah,
enforcement directive. But the thing is,
yeah,
everybody is pretty much working in, I guess in this case, for Weird Tech.
yeah. There is no police force. There is no government. Everything's freelance. So
Everything.
you want anything done, it's just done by whoever can do it the cheapest and the most successfully to the satisfaction of whoever's going to. It's just market forces. It's just capitalism gone wild. So
Hmm.
so so there is AI that kind of organizes how these kind of bids for things go out. So the lancers investigate the crimes, but then the forensic guys, they've also just been summoned by their app because they're in the area and they're willing to do it for the rate that's offered. It's like being an Uber driver. So everything's like being an
Yeah.
Uber driver. There is no job that hasn't been reduced down to this level, which is the way certain people would like our lives to be ordered because it benefits them.
Mm.
Yeah, you've got to try and sort of deal with that whilst you're also investigating this case. So there's just wildly different standards of competence in like every area of what you're trying to do, and you're constantly at the mercy of just someone that wants to give you like a bad rating. So
Mm,
you either say I don't give a fuck and I'm quite happy going to live around with my zero rating and suffer the consequences, or you say like, all right, I have to really care about what everybody I meet thinks about me and make them happy,
for sure.
which is the other side of it. So yeah, it's an extrapolation of the way our world is going, or the way certain parts of our world is going,
Right.
and sort of putting that into the future and sort of seeing exactly how that would be.
Now, the negavirus that is of course responsible for killing half the population is
Yeah,
is that the catalyst for pretty much why everybody is the where they are, why society is pretty much broken because of this pandemic that basically occurred and split
yeah,
this society in two?
yeah. It's part of it. I mean, obviously that's inspired by COVID. So
Yeah.
we went through this traumatic event which totally changed our lives for a long period, and kind of, so the negavirus is like a more deadly version of that that wiped out like half the population. And then in order to cope with that, you've got these husks that everyone's has to kind of be fitted with as soon as they're kind of born. They're kind of bio organic technology, so they kind of grow with you.
Mm-hmm.
But it basically cuts off your senses from the real, outside world, and replaces them with a computerized kind of interpretation of it, which is to your benefit in the fact that you can make things more pleasurable, or you can make the day more sunny. Do you know what I mean? You could sort of make the smells sweeter. So you could say like, "Oh, this is making your life better," but you could also say this is just a load of people walking around in a deluded reality. So it depends on your point of view.
Right.
So yeah, you'd have to have some reason why that system was adopted. So the negavirus is the reason why everyone takes that so seriously.
For sure, because you actually see like the rebellion of certain people who are basically doing away with their husk and just walking around naturally. I think yeah, the way that they're compared, their term is skin freaks.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they're called. That's because it's dangerous to the rest of the population, so they don't like it. So yeah, yeah. I mean, in any system, you'd always get these bubbles of rebellion. So these guys are starting to experiment with. They've found a way to negate their husks, which is very dangerous to the people that are selling that technology. So yeah, it's a crime that will have a lot of ramifications for how the whole kind of society of the tract works.
Mm. Now, of course, the story as a whole deals with things like surveillance, of course, technology, humanity.
Mm.
What were the things that were kind of like most important to you as far as theme?
Um, right. Well, one of the main themes is like this sort of this longing for kind of human contact.
Hmm.
So like sort of flesh on flesh, kind of skin to skin contact, which I think is a very important part of what makes us human, and like what keeps us kind of happy and centered is the fact that your wife might just touch you on the shoulder, or stroke your cheek or something, and that calms you down, or that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
So you're living in a world of the future where that doesn't exist anymore. So if
Mm.
she does that, then it's her husk kind of transmits to your husk what the feeling of her fingers on your skin is. And you could say like, oh well, it's exactly the same, but is it? How would you know? Because
Right.
we've never lived without your husk. So it could be that it's way more pleasurable than if she does it without the husk. But I think something that we've maybe all learned from the way internet has made certain things readily available to people is just having more extreme versions of pleasure available to you doesn't necessarily make you happier as a person. And there's something to be said to the natural rhythm of how humans have experienced life over the last the few thousands of years.
Yeah.
and that's actually what keeps us kind of centered and calm and content. And if we have too much stimulation in any one area, it's maybe not, great for us. And you can understand people always wanting more. That's a natural desire.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think I've certainly learned over my life that the more I kind of limit myself and just try and organize my life around a natural kind of rhythm of, how much of anything do I actually need? And this thing is really pleasurable, but it's really pleasurable if I do it like, you know, every week. If I do it every day, it just becomes like too much. You know what I mean? It's not pleasurable anymore because I'm overdoing it. It might just be something as simple as eating like chocolate cake, which you love.
Hmm.
It's a really nice treat if you do it once every 2 weeks. But if you have it every day, it just starts to feel really sickly and disgusting. So, 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 there's all kinds of yeah. So it's getting into that desire and that longing for something real in a world of technological kind of artifice.
Mm.
I guess that's the main theme.
Now, would you say that like the dynamic that's basically shown towards the end of book two, to where obviously there's going to be a moment between Cram and Teo. There's going to be a
Yeah.
dynamic that's basically going to get built. Is Teo going to serve herself as a reminder of what the world should be to Cram?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm drawing elements of that at the moment. So, and I'm constantly. I was literally this morning before I came on here. I had this scene where they were interacting, and I was thinking, right, well, he could do that to her, or she could do that to him. So he's leading her, or she's leading him. Which way around is the best? So basically, I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah.
with the sort of he's very much at the start of the story working within the system. She is very much a rebel outside the system, trying to destroy it from within. So that's what the Creme Roses are basically trying to do as a group. So they start off on opposing sides, and what I think is quite interesting with a story is we don't have a good guy and a bad guy. You have somebody that's investigating a crime and you have somebody that's involved in a crime. So they come together and they have two different sides initially of this kind of world. But when they meet and they talk and they interact, they find that they really like each other. They're very strongly attracted to each other, but also that there are elements of what Tio's doing that really, really, really appeal to Cram.
Hmm.
And there are things Cram can do that really, really appeal to Tio. But they don't trust each other because they're on different sides of this murder investigation. So you've got this constant balance between, the two characters and the 2 points of view. It's quite kind of charged and sexy and kind of dramatic, and you're not really sure who you can trust.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I'm approaching those two characters.
Mm. Now, is this more so, I guess, a means of exploring the idea of humanity surviving in a technological world, a highly technological world?
Yeah, I guess that is, but yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's something that is part of a lot of cyberpunk or most cyberpunk. So
Yeah.
it's not kind of like my main focus. I've got some ideas that go into a slightly different direction and hopefully say something a little bit differently and a little bit fresh about this kind of thing, which is probably informed by the fact that I feel that we're kind of living through a lot of these issues now and just my emotional reaction to them. So yeah, the main kind of theme that is a theme, but the main kind of focus is in slightly different areas that I don't want to give away because they relate to the end of the story.
Definitely. Now, as far as this being done on Kickstarter, it's an independent comic. It's an indie. What were the like? I guess the biggest advantages, and better yet, even some of the challenges of creating this comic independently.
Well, I got into comics in 2010 to make my own stuff,
Yeah.
so that was very much the motivation. And I didn't really understand how I was going to do that. I thought it would be possible. I thought the market had changed enough that it would be possible. So initially, I was trying to sell comics digitally,
Hmm.
and then I was trying to like publish them myself and then sell them, online or at comic cons or through shops and things. So and then I got into the comic was quite popular. The first comic I did was called Death Sentence. It
Hmm.
was quite popular. So um, it was more successful than I was expecting, basically. And it was the same sort of process, designing original looking characters and taking a different kind of approach with the subject matter and trying
Hmm.
to bring something new to it and fresh. It was a very sort of rock and roll kind of comic. And I was able to sell kind of like rights to the work, even though it was self published. I would sell like rights to serialize it, or I'd sell rights to print it in France, or then I'd sold the rights for Titan. Titan basically republished the whole thing
Yeah.
as a Titan comic, and then they collected it into graphic novels, and then they've recently collected it into a big deluxe hardback, like a 490-page hardback that you can get
Excellent.
online at any bookshop. Yeah, so that's from Titan Comics. So that was how I was approaching kind of making my own stuff and trying to make a living from it. Then as a result of that attention, you get asked sometimes to do things for other publishers. Like I got asked to write some stuff for Marvel and do some X-Men stuff and a bit of Hulk and the odd little thing for DC or some stuff for 2000 AD.
Hmm.
And I was able to do that as long as it wasn't interfering with like my main comics, which is, bringing out my own stuff. So what I'm trying to do with Chrome Roses, as far as that side of things, is I think the market is so different now from when I started doing this in 2010.
For sure.
So, and crowdfunding is such a big deal now with everybody that wants to make an independent comic or bring kind of their own vision to something, because it gives you a head start and it helps you find readers, and it means you can not sell your rights and you can just do something. I think the best way to do independent comics is to do something that's uniquely you in your
Hmm.
personality and that is different to anything else out there. I don't think you can do comics that are just versions of things that are very successful or genres that are very successful, but I'm not sure they're necessarily going to be the real kind of winners creatively or financially. I think, but people that I see that are doing original different kind of stuff. I think
Hmm.
they can do very well selling their own kind of books online and also crowdfunding. So as soon as I came up with Chrome Roses, I was like very clear. It wasn't anything that I wanted to approach a publisher with or to sort of take to a publisher or to sell any rights to.
Yeah.
I wanted to basically just create the whole thing as far as I could, if I could, myself exactly my way, trying to lean into sort of making it a little bit different and a little bit weird, which I'm always trying to do, and then just just sort of have the satisfaction of completely owning something that you love and is exactly the story that you wanted to tell.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That is
Yeah.
so rare to be able to do that. So it's going well so far, thanks to the many readers that have bought the comic and have backed the campaigns and stuff. It's
Sure.
working so far. So I just feel a great responsibility whenever anybody buys my work. I just want to make something that's so amazing that they love it as much as I love it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and I think you're finding people that share your enthusiasm for like whatever it may be.
That's true.
You know, all these themes that we've talked about. People that are massively into this stuff.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and that's a great, joyful thing, you know?
Yeah. Now, do you feel as though you find more of your readers coming back because they've read your stuff prior, where whether it's been like, oh, I read Death Sentence and I knew you were coming out with this book, so I definitely wanted to participate in this Kickstarter because I can't wait to see what you have coming next. And then also, are they equating that, or are you finding some of your readers be like, hey, I remember you from X-Men Gold. Of course, I want to read
Yeah.
something that you have. Do you find it almost the same? That like, oh, I read Death Sentence, or better yet, I read a lot of your mainstream stuff. or have seen some of your work on your Main Street stuff, and yet they wanted to find you here. They're like, I found you on Kickstarter. I can't believe you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when you start off, you've got you kind of know your readers. You know, when I first started off, I had like 50 people that would buy my stuff, and then it was like 300, and then it was like 1,000. So when you start off in those sort of figures, you know them all. You know their names.
Yeah,
You know, you're sending them the comics through the post, so you know where they live, and you know they feel like they write to you, and they're excited because they're into something. It's like when you the first one to discover a band before they get big or something. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
You feel very attached to the band, and the band are kind of really grateful for the support. So there's people that bought the recent Chrome Roses that bought my first comic, in 2010.
Mm,
So they're really important, and it's always really, really. I'm always really happy to see those people. But I always try and put something extra in, if I can,
yeah,
slip something extra into their envelope just to say thank you or whatever. So, it's great to have those guys. But because, like I say, the market's changed so much. With the online tools now and the online advertising and the where you can have your web shop or your crowdfunder. And I realized about 6 years ago that obviously the readership was growing all the time. But I realized that every time I did a new comic, it was actually more than half of the people that were buying the comic were completely new to
mm,
me. Like they literally had never heard of me before, which is not surprising because I'm not a famous guy or anything. But they just really liked what they saw and they wanted to buy it. And then when they come and they see, that it's cool, they want to buy all of it. They sort of go back and they buy
right.
like all my back issues and things. So, and that's really cool. And that really surprised me. First time I started to actually get, data that I could see, on a chart, I was like, fuck, I had no idea that there was so many new people each time.
Hmm.
So that's quite exciting because, I mean, it's a big world out there and it's a really, really fucking good comic. So
Right.
I'm always excited to sort of, for someone to literally like last week, I was just posting some videos of me drawing it and a few images and things from the comic, and people were like, "Oh my god, this is so fucking cool! I had no idea you were doing this." And
Hmm.
it's like I literally, every day I'm like putting my stuff out there. So
Right.
but you're always reaching someone that's literally never
Seeing it
seen
for
it,
the
never
first
heard
time.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really exciting. It's really exciting when they respond, and it kind of you think, yeah, I'm on the right track here. I'm doing something. It's not just me. I'm not just deluded. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
actually a really exciting comic.
For sure.
So I'm really excited by that. Yeah.
Now with the book, of course, it's going into the third book, to where the
Yeah.
trilogy, of course, is going to meet its end, obviously in its
Hmm.
climax. So, what do you hope for people that are going, or better yet, maybe people haven't contributed to the last two Kickstarters and they're just going to read this for the first time and they're going to just buy all
Mm.
three books. You know how people usually like will be like, oh, I'll wait for the single issues until
Yeah.
until the
Yeah.
trade comes out. You know.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
like, what do you have to to push forward at the end of this trilogy? Like, how is that marketing value for people that have never heard this before, that are going to basically pretty much buy all three books in one hit?
Yeah, I think when I do the third book, and you can get the whole trilogy, I think that'll be the biggest one that I've done so far. Because, as you say, people just love to buy a trilogy. They love to buy a complete story. They
Hmm.
love to dive in that and know it's all there. Um, but like I say, the way I've structured this is kind of I love writing short stories. I love writing screenplays and TV plays, and um, I love the way that you have like short stories that are nice and complete and feel satisfying, but then they fit perfectly into a bigger narrative.
Hmm.
So it goes without saying. I mean, I've got so many fucking ideas for this world and these characters and the sub characters that are introduced on the way, the
Hmm.
other Chrome Roses who are all really, really cool. It goes without saying that when we get to the end of the big first trilogy, and you get the big reveal and the big resolution, which is going to be really, really satisfying. The whole
Right.
thing's building to this from the start. But there's going to be, along the way, I always leave like threads hanging or characters that you're like, oh, and now we can see their point of view on this thing, and then of course while that was going on, this was going on with this character over here, which then completely fucks that up for those guys. So there's I've got more stories than I
Right.
know what to do with. So, and that's why I wanted to do Chrome Roses, because I thought like I've got murder mystery stories, I've got detective stories, I've got science fiction stories, I've got cyberpunk stories, and with a bit of tweaking, I can make a lot of those work in this world, and I can basically tell all the stories that I love
Yeah.
within one kind of universe that kind of I'm in control of.
Hmm.
So the quality is always kind of guaranteed, because I have many strengths and weaknesses, but I'm not sort of super fast, which is a
Yeah.
weakness. But also, part of the reason for that is that I won't compromise on quality, so it's always going to deliver and
Good.
be good. So that's the way I work, and from that point of view, that's why I've got fans that are still buying my stuff 15 years later, because they know there's a certain amount of quality that's always going to be there.
Right.
And also, I've got a kind of slightly quirky, personality or humor or something that kind of resonates through all my work that
Right.
people like, certain people like.
Absolutely. So after the end of this campaign, which is basically it's coming up very soon, it'll still be the beginning of 2026. What's
Mm.
next?
Yeah, at the moment, you can still, there's late pledges on the book 2 campaign, so you
Hmm.
can get that if you go to the Kickstarter for the giant size Cyberpunk Monty Nero. That's available. Um, and then I'm working on the next book, and getting everything printed for the current books, and getting those sent out, which is a big job in itself.
Yeah.
And then I try very hard. Like I say, I work on the basis of I've got my plots, and then I work out my plots in detail, scene by scene. So it's like a framework.
Hmm.
So it's actually quite quick to do that part of it. So you can have stories in place, that will tie in with this later and will be, potentially another character in this Creme Roses universe
Yeah.
with a story that's just as exciting, but ties into this one and maybe twists it in a different direction than you thought you knew when you read it. So I've got a few of those worked out. So yeah, I'll be pretty. Basically my ideal plan, as long as it all works, is I would just love to make Chrome Roses stories for the next 20 years, and some of them would be like detective stories. Some of them would be murder mystery. Some of them would be more kind of sexual. Some
Yeah.
of them would be more kind of like sci-fi, kind of get leaning into the sort of more kind of science fiction elements and themes. So it seems to me a world where I can just have a lot of fun visually and with storytelling,
Hmm.
and express all the different things that I'm interested in one kind of world.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to build, something that will really last. You know what I mean? Something where you could come to this in 20 years and think like, fuck, there are like 20 graphic novels and they're all awesome,
Yeah.
and they all kind of link, and they all mean something and add something to this world. And I'm just trying to make it. I'm constantly trying to make it just a little bit, push myself to make it a little bit different and a little bit more interesting than other things that I see out there. But a lot of this is just down to taste.
Yeah.
All you can do is make something that you love, and then you hope other people will love it too.
Do you feel as though Chrome Roses as a graphic novel could be exercised even outside of its own medium to be an animation or a game?
Yeah, it could, but I don't have any interest in pushing that. Like, I know a lot of people, they want to make stuff so they can sell it as TV shows or cinema or whatever.
Hmm.
And like, I'm a simple guy. It's like I feel so lucky to be able to write and draw
Yeah.
like my own stories in my own world. And if I'm selling enough comics that people can keep me doing that,
Hmm.
I just feel like I'm as happy as I can be. You know, I will literally. I'd probably be less happy if there was some cinema version that I had to go to meetings sort of every week to talk to some Hollywood people about, you know, some cinema bastardization of my stories where they turned it into something different that I
Right.
wasn't really 100% down with. That would, to be honest, that would just piss me off. So
Right. Right. Right.
I'd much rather. I mean, as long as you know, I've got the freedom to make stories the way I want to make them. I think that's the best thing you can have if you're an artist or a writer. If you've got freedom just to express your imagination, that's what you do when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And you have that freedom when you're a kid because there's nothing rising on it. And then as soon as you get to adulthood, you have to kind of earn money. So you're kind of constantly compromising. And when I used to design the characters for computer games, I'd design a load of characters. I'd feel like, you know, 5 of them were kind of derivative, like 5 of them were really cool, and 5 of them were like really amazing and could be the next big thing. And it would always we'd always end up with the derivative ones. You know what I mean? We'd focus group them, and it would be like, oh yeah, let's do these characters that look a lot like these other characters that were in this other successful game.
Yep.
So you were just constantly kind of hitting your head against this kind of brick wall about how you could express yourself. So I just feel blessed to be able to, you know, make this stuff. So I don't need to be rich. I don't want to be rich. I don't want to have TV shows and cinema versions of what I'm doing, particularly. You know, if someone came along, gave me a load of money, and made it a brilliant version of it that totally respected everything that I'd done, I'd be fucking delighted. But I think the chances of that happening are so slim that there's no point. There's no point worrying about it. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
So I just concentrate on trying to make something truly amazing. It's a moment in time, right, where suddenly people like me can make universes and worlds over a period of years that have real integrity to them as a storytelling, you know, universe and device and characters that develop. And I think if you've got the skill and the knowledge and the means and the opportunity to do that, it's almost criminal not to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's such a wonderful moment to be making comics that people like me have that opportunity. So I just feel very happy that I get to do that. I mean, it's fucking hard work. I will not lie.
Oh,
It's
for
very
sure.
hard. It's very hard work, but it's also, you know, it's a vocation, not a job. So it's kind of like, you know, it fulfills me.
Hmm.
So that makes the work, the actual physical hours, a lot easier to bear. So I just want to get faster at drawing, man. That would really make me happy.
Excellent. Excellent. Monty, I really appreciate your time. What is it? The late pledges for book 2 are still
Mm.
available on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, yeah, you can still get in on that. And then I'll probably do another round of like advertising and taking orders, probably around December.
Okay.
Let's see how things shape up. Like I say, I'm always hopeful that I can just draw these books quicker and quicker without losing quality. But when it comes down to it, like I was drawing some stuff like on Friday, and it was like, okay, I can see a quick way of doing this,
Yeah.
and I can also see a way where I could make it like amazing. Like I always go with the
Right.
amazing. You know what I mean? It's like I'd be richer if I went with the quick way, but
Right.
I always go with the amazing. Um, so there's always that balance, but it's fun, man. It's great fun.
Yeah. Now, when should we expect the ending? Of course, when the trilogy does finish and that comes out on Kickstarter as well.
Oh, that'll be the
That
December
would be December.
book.
Good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all coming to a conclusion, and yeah, I'm really pleased with how much I've been able to build a kind of interesting, because you have an idea, a main idea, but then obviously, like I say, when you're drawing it, you have all these, as you're drawing it, you just have all these other ideas, and then it kind
Yeah.
of like grows exponentially. And because it's all basically just in my head, it kind of makes sense. And often it goes in a way that you're not expecting. It just sort of twists, and you're like, oh yeah, that would be really cool. And that would mean that I had this idea for like a year ago, this would tie in with that. And you're like, fuck yeah, that's excellent. So it's just just developing it like that. Really, it's really interesting.
Absolutely, Monty. I gotta say this was an excellent conversation. I appreciate you letting me into your world. Definitely with Chrome Roses, basically encompassing this dystopian world that you built. This is an amazing conversation. So I thank you for doing this with me.
Thanks, man. I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time to read the stuff and like think it through and come up with some really, really good questions. I mean, you're obviously very good at what you do, so I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you again. Of course, for everybody here at the Facts Project, was it Chrome Roses? You could still get those late pledges on Kickstarter right now. Obviously, the trilogy, we will see it for itself when it comes out at the end of this year in December. So look out for that. So for everybody here, myself included, James Grandmaster Facts Voice, Monty Nero, live all the way from Scotland. Thank you for being here, and we will see you guys next time. We are out.